very much for joining. My name is Ricky Tran. Any Rush Hour fans in the audience? Put your hands up. I am not the villain from Rush Hour 2, but if you've heard my name, that's exactly how you remember. I'm not Ricky Tan, but I'm the Director of Business Development for Xsolla. I've been in the influencer industry for about 7, running on to 8 years now. I'm so happy to be joined by, they're essentially all my friends, so I call all my friends, hey, let's talk about influencers. So let's start over at you, Pete. Introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, I'm Pete Basgen. I run the global gaming team at a big ad agency called Wavemaker Global. Don't hold that against me, but I worked with Rick a million years ago at a couple different little things, doing influencer stuff and working with beautiful game brands such as yourselves.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Lily. I am former indie dev publisher for marketing manager. I currently run the CreatorU program as well as doing things with esports awards and also advertising solutions primarily. So, yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Andy. I'm the influencer and gaming community director for Stand Up to Cancer, so representing the nonprofit side and how we work with influencers. Been doing it for 6 years. We kicked things off in 2019, but really excited to talk with this guy right here.
It's lovely. Thank you. Yeah, it's awesome. Really kick things off. We're gonna kick things off with like impact and ROI. Ooh, nice little graphic there. Get it going. So how do we kind of differentiate between like an influencer who drives engagement and one who actually drives game sales or downloads? I'm actually gonna throw that one over to you, Pete. What do you feel?
Well, I don't work. I work with one giant endemic gaming brand at this point, but most of the way that I'm thinking about influencers in the gaming space now is that in the broader way of like not just downloads and game sales, but also like how do we drive engagement with consumer brands at large, right? Like how do we get somebody to sign up for DoorDash? How do we get somebody to use Adobe products? Engagement and actual game sales is like all about, I don't want to just lean in on like tech as the solution to this, but yeah. The simplest answer is like having better tech in place is how you make that connection, right?
Yeah.
A lot of engagement is great, but being able to attribute actual like actions to that engagement with a tech platform, and there's a lot of
there's like a tremendous amount of like different platforms. Mm-hmm. Like don't want to. We're here for one, but like it's attribution and really understanding the return on the investment. There's so many tools that like do game giveaway keys, game sales, revenue share, flat fees. There's a whole bunch, and you have a lot of like analytics and metrics that kind of like help you understand how the campaign kind of went, whether it's like for the game sales or actual engagement, and that's kind of where we kind of go through there.
From the agency advertiser side, we're like far enough down the path at this point in 2025 that's like that used to be a like nice to have, and even longer ago it was just a pipe dream. Now it's like something that we build into a plan right from the start. So we just wouldn't work with influencers in most cases without an attribution plan in place at this point.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. Andy, you want to?
I mean, we're not driving game sales, but with nonprofit, it's fundraising, it's awareness. So engagement's such a key word, and it's not only how they get engaged by their community, because when they're fundraising, their community's engaged, and they have to engage their community. So the types of influencers that fundraise, that are engaging and focusing on their chat, that's super important to raising money and raising awareness, because they're speaking about what they're raising money for. But that generates fundraising dollars, and in a sense, they could be playing video games. They're still marketing your game in a sense while they fundraise. Yeah. So in a sense, you're still seeing the use of games, playing games. Some people want to play a brand new game as their first charity stream, or integrate that way. But engagement is the key word for fundraising and awareness for as far as nonprofit side. I
always find it fun that like a lot of the community for micro influencers or like kind of mid-tier type influencers are super engaged, and they always run like 1 or 2 charity streams a year, and like I love tuning in, donating like my own money towards like the cause as well too, and you get a bonus of just watching them play a fun game, like you said, like a brand new game, trying new things out. Things happen during like Halloween or something like that, and like Pete's a big fan of like horror, and if anyone likes horror, just talk to Pete, and he's like a Wikipedia of horror stuff. But yeah,
it's definitely not my genre.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of like jumping into like, Lily, I'm gonna throw this one at you. Like, can you kind of share an example of like where an influencer partnership exceeded the expectations kind of like going into it? And, what did you learn from that?
Yeah, I will say that like in the past when I did run any like upcoming game launches, you're picking out your influencers and looking for people with different similar titles and similar audiences. And one influencer I found that exceeded my expectations was when they took pretty much like our assets and our brief, but then kind of flipped it into their own style and their personality. But also I had her build a cosplay and she started, streaming and creating content within the game. So cool. And that was just something, like I wasn't expecting for her to do. It was just more so of like, oh wow, you actually went above and beyond for this campaign. She continued to play the game post-launch as well as like any, the add-ons and like different seasons and things like that, so yeah. Yeah,
no, that's a really good answer. It's like a lot of times where I'm not sure how everyone is really familiar with like influencer marketing or engaging with influencers. It's tough. Most of the time you kind of just think of the campaign and you just like build it out and like, here are the key talking points. Here's the money or whatever it looks like, $100, whatever the agreement kind of looks like, and then you don't know what's going to happen with that money, with all those key talking points. And the fact that she was able to like build a whole entire cosplay around the game, that means not only was she invested into it, like you picked the right influencer to promote the game. So I thought that was absolutely insane. Anything to add? B?
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to say that I think what's interesting from a nonprofit perspective is I've been blown away by smaller streamers that raise big dollar amounts when you don't expect that. And it's something I've learned. You can go after the big follower with the big, lots of followers and like big engagement does a lot, but sometimes the smaller creators could really make a difference. So I have a streamer that's been working with us since 2019. Her name's Stormfall33. She raised maybe $100 in 2019. And last year she hit her 25,000 raised in total joining us every year.
Crazy.
And I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
And she celebrated, she couldn't believe it. Those are that's one of many examples of just really impactful, just seeing that growth, so that's one, and there's many more that exceeded my expectations.
Talking about nonprofits, that's actually kind of the next point is like, how can nonprofits generally effectively collaborate with, potential developers and publishers and to drive that social impact, talk about charities and, games and.
Yeah, so I think when a lot of nonprofits get in, they're like, man, I'd love to do that in-game activation, that microtransaction fundraiser, because there's a lot of those and they're amazing. But what I found is, developers need a lot of runway for that. So one recommendation that I've recommended other people and what I've done is basically they have influencer marketing teams.
Yeah.
They're doing influencer marketing sales with playing new games on stream. Let's flip that script and let's see if they want to support by doing a call to action. So say the studio, hey, we're going to join Stand Up to Cancer for this month. How would you like to join us in supporting them for a week or a weekend, playing our game, doing something good? So it's really leaning into these ecosystems that already exist, and this goes with any brand, because influencer marketing, you got retail brands working with influencers. So as a nonprofit, the simple ask is going, hey, how can we work with some of your influencers to come support us?
Right.
So I think one quick example is in 2020, actually, when we were trying to figure out how to do something with a developer, Sega, I actually pitched them that idea, and we did Sega and Stand Up to Cancer Week.
Yeah.
And they streamed a full week. They played Sega games. It was, there was all this camaraderie, and it was just so impactful because they're still, like I said before, marketing the game while they're doing social good and, engagement, bringing together, So I think it's like, how do you take what they already have existing with influencers and put that in as your ask?
Yeah, and it's a good way to like build up the brand reputation as well too, right? So I mean, that's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and it's a lower lift.
Yeah.
Trying to get an in-game skin that donates back to cancer research is awesome, but I think it's easier to go to a developer and say, hey, how can we work with your influencers?
Right.
So that's kind of like what I recommend is if you're a nonprofit, lean into who they're working with already and see if you can do something special.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
cool.
Yeah.
top tier versus micros. It's kind of always the question, like, do we go after the big guys, or do we focus on the micro? And you could probably guess what we're probably gonna say. We're gonna say micro, but there's actually room for the big people, and there's definitely uses for them. So that's kind of going to when should we focus on large creators, and when should we focus on the micro creators for the better bet? I'm going to jump in and answer this question. Like, I think that if you are building brand awareness, you want to get as many eyes as possible. Definitely target like the large creators with the massive followings. But if you want to, let's say you're building a campaign, you want to drive sales, the community always gives back to the influencers. So micro-sized influencers will be the better bet for that. What do you guys think of that?
If you have a brand already, then actually, first of all, it's never an either or at least often isn't an either or.
Yeah.
You can mix them and sort of like run the gamut and sort of spend more heavily on micro end and engage a big guy if you need that broad reach. But I would say working with the really, really big names makes a lot more sense if you already have a brand that has name recognition, right?
Right.
If you're launching in an Assassin's Creed or something that has like immediate, I know what that is. Working with somebody big makes all the sense in the world.
Right.
But if you're a smaller end thing that's trying to build like true sentiment, positive sentiment, with no previous engagement, then micro should always be your first thought.
Fair enough. And also sometimes it's not within the marketing budget to like hit all those like very, very large creators as well too. And you'll hear first from like any agency or any influencer marketing team, or if you're hiring or planning to hire an influencer marketer, they get really expensive to get someone that's like absolutely huge, right?
Yeah, I also think that it really kind of just depends on what you're trying to run as a campaign as well. So I think your first question should be like, what is your current goal? Are you currently in the beta or testing phase of your game?
Yeah, good point.
Or are you working on the release week or the demo or even just like a new season that's coming up? I think that really defining what your goals are is where you should start first, and then look into, okay, like if I want a macro influencer, that's something where you can get reach. But whereas like micro influencers, you can also use them to kind of build out the community, but also do like the different conversion rates and just like let's say you're wanting to have more people add to your wish list, or even just like buy or purchase like some of the games or in-game packs and things like that. So I really just think it depends, but you should also focus like where's your starting point. So.
Yeah, good point. And like sometimes like single player is single player. It's like one and done. But then you also have like other games that are free to play, and then they potentially can have like a co-op element or a community building type element. So you kind of pick and choose, and depending on like what game you are developing, and kind of use that knowledge and choose the right influencer for that as well too.
I have a good example.
Yes.
Because that's a great question for a nonprofit. Do you go for the top tier or the micro? And what's interesting is retention. You might get that big creator to support you 1 year, but it's likely they might not come back. But the smaller creators, they do so much impact as communities themselves, and they will come back. Because I'm working with creators that have been supporting us for 5 years. The bigger creators, they'll come back, but maybe it's 2 years after the last time they did it. And I think one example real quick is I saw this niche for Lego brick building creators, right? Yeah. And I saw the streamer 3 years ago, and I said, hey, why don't you join our event? They build Lego on stream, they play Lego games. And then the next year he brought in 10. And then the next year it was 20, but then last August there were 70 of them.
Oh my goodness.
And these are just smaller creators, and they raised $117,000 in 1 week. And that is the power of a small.
That's awesome.
That's the power of small communities. So I don't never underestimate the power of a small creator and what they could do. So, you can go for the big creators to anchor.
Yeah.
But man, that just blew my mind. So.
That's actually absolutely incredible. 117,
Over time and
the
just
power
growth.
of numbers. Yeah.
Power in numbers.
Speaking of numbers, how do we measure success? What metrics matter most when measuring an influencer's impact? especially for indie developers with limited budgets. Who wants to take this one on?
It's tricky.
Yeah.
What
No,
are you
you're
try-
right.
What
Yeah,
are you
it
trying
is
to do?
tricky.
How much money do you have?
Yeah.
I'm going to speak from the side of somebody who works with a fairly large streamer on the management side. I've seen a massive spike in indie and mid-sized devs reaching out to us looking to drive positive Steam reviews as their number one KPI.
Right.
And so that's, I mean, just speaking from recent experience, that has been kind of we measure success based on how many clicks through your attribution link are we going to get, and then what does the sentiment look like before and after your, keeping in mind this is a pretty big streamer.
Yeah.
They want to see a measurable lift from before the stream and after the stream in Steam sentiment.
Right.
So that's kind of emerged pretty dramatically over the last, I would say, 18 months as like the key metric.
Right.
But it's something that comes up in every single ask we get at this point.
It's kind of interesting. It kind of reminds me of whenever I purchase things on Amazon and I just look at the reviews and who has the most reviews.
Yeah.
That's usually how I,
I mean, we all do it.
Yeah.
I do for restaurants.
Definitely.
I'm constantly wanting to eat, constantly wanting to eat food. I go to San Francisco, I just want to eat, and I'm Canadian, by the way, so it really hurts my wallet like crazy. But yeah, it's just how it is. Pete alluded to the fact that we used to work together, and we worked at a company called Wavemaker. It was all metrics and analytics, and majority of our customers, whether if they're indie or if they're AAA, they just wanted to do brand awareness. So they just simply gave away keys. They weren't. Yeah, the hope is, you're gonna drive sales towards it, but it's just simple brand awareness. And you track for the campaign for 30 days, whatever the metrics you want to do, average concurrent viewerships, peak spikes, or how long the streams are going for. And sometimes, whether if you pay them or not, your hope is that they continuously play the game for as long as possible. And that's, they're constantly creating content. They're constantly, you hope that they do, YouTube content, live stream content, and the whole shebang. YouTube, shorts, and
It's a callback to the power of micro-influencers.
Yeah.
When you work with a really big name, chances are almost zero, especially if you're a small game and you're paying this big person to play your game for a very contained, contractually agreed upon window.
Yeah.
Chances are almost zero that they are going to organically go back to that game and play it over and over again and make content about it. Chances are much better with a smaller person that their community might just fall in love with this thing, with this game of yours, and then they go back to it and you're getting content and content and content out of that engagement. Because if you go pay a big COD streamer to play your little indie cozy game, they're not going back to it.
I'm gonna throw you off a little bit, Andy. I'm just curious
Oh.
on the
All right.
the charity side. So,
Yes.
you mentioned potentially they have new games or they're playing whatever. Because you don't dictate what games the charity streamers play. But do you ever get feedback from?
Well, I think there's certain games that are better to play when you're fundraising. If you're playing Call of Duty, they're so focused on playing
It's true.
that they're not speaking about the cause. They're not talking to the audience. You play a cozy game. You play Minecraft. I talked about the Lego brick builders. They're just building on stream and talking to their community.
Yeah.
So but not to take away from first-person shooters. We have
Right.
plenty of Fortnite players, but I think there's something about the type of game they're playing. So sometimes I recommend play something different.
Yeah.
Don't play the normal thing. So I remember one Call of Duty streamer played Uno on stream for 6 hours. And that was great. His community didn't do that before.
Right.
And he ended up raising a great amount of money, and it was different. So I kind of recommend those types that don't play the cozy games and the
Right.
games that are good for.
Yeah.
I'm why don't you throw a wrench at your community and say, hey, for this special charity stream, I'm going to I'm going to play this game, or I'm going to play Minecraft for the first time.
Can we play Uno on stream?
I would love to. I like Uno.
Let's talk about trends, mistakes in the future. We're kind of getting to the point here, but what's kind of the common mistake you guys see developers, publishers make when they're working with influencers?
Throwing money at the problem.
Okay, yeah, he took it out of my mouth. Yeah, throwing money, just was the sunk cost fallacies, throwing money, and then you think that's going to solve the solution. That's fine. I am a big believer of if you do it, sure, But if you continuously do it, there's something wrong that you're doing. You're not learning from your mistake. You're not like reiterating, going back and like, I'm changing my strategy. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have threw like $100,000 at this particular streamer or whatever. Maybe I want to like spread it across like 100 micro influencers, or like, you know, do something very unique or like special, involving also the community as well too. Is, you know, maybe an example of how you kind of like go back to it and figure something new out.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, don't do it again. Like, reuse a different, or do a different tactic. Say like a lot of the mistakes that I've seen is just, you know, not really using the right influencer. Also, you know, providing them help, but not even giving them key features about your game. Like, you should really put some notes into like, okay, this is a specific chapter of one of the games that, you know, we're launching, and it's, you gotta actually, you know, tell them what, you know, is exciting about the game, what are the great features, and how is this going to be very entertaining, and what kind of content can that influencer actually make out of it. But that was like one thing that I saw, and just not having a goal using influencers. It's, you really do need to like kind of set some expectations about the games, give them a little bit of guidance, but still give them the creative freedom to actually create the content. So.
Yep. Being overly prescriptive and under-preparing the streamers that you work with is a huge mistake. Right?
Yeah.
Demanding particular talking points, or like not giving them anything to go off of.
Influencers, I'm not saying all, they're like notoriously like lazy when it comes to, did I say the wrong word?
No.
But like, it's very true though. Like, it's tough to, you give them all this stuff, and I've ran through it so many times, like, give them all the material, everything that I possibly do, and they miss like 2 or 3 points. So it's like really coaching them and really like teaching them. And that kind of goes back to like, also if you were to like say engage an agency to help you promote the game, if the agency is not asking a lot of questions and they're not like really focused on it, because they got a lot of things going on at the exact same time, you probably engaged the wrong like agency, for example. Hopefully no agencies are here and they'll yell at me about it. But like, but you know, it's hiring and looking for the right people. You're shopping around. You're shopping for the right person to, you know, either publish your game, or you're shopping for someone to like promote your game. It requires a lot of work, and if you're especially putting a lot of your marketing budget towards it, again, don't throw money at the problem. Like, your money needs to go somewhere. Understand where your money is essentially going for. Speaking of money, with kind of the growing scrutiny around paid promotions, like, how can brands maintain transparency without hurting campaign effectiveness? I like this question, and it's a little hard, and it's a little, I don't want to say controversial, but like, you know, we all know that if we pay an influencer, is what they're promoting authentic? You know what I mean? Like, do we kind of just, oh yeah, here's like $1,000 to promote the game? It's not authentic, you know. So I think a lot of publishers or developers, they can get very creative in how they engage with the influencers. A lot of them, some of them won't take any money. You could give them the game keys for free, and you kind of just hope that they'll play it. Most of the time they are. Content creators, it's in the word. They want to create content. They want to create good content. And you got to coach them a little bit sometimes. You got to go say, hey, my game might not necessarily be the most exciting game to potentially stream, but then, you know, I would love for you to create like, you know, tutorial guides, like, you know, just get started, or like, I'm going to use a Monster Hunter reference, like the top 20 foods or whatever to, you know, before you battle like Raidou, for example. But yeah, that's kind of like my thought process on it, but what do you guys think?
I think if you're gonna, I mean, obviously, because I'm the nonprofit side, but this is just me thinking as a creator, if you're gonna pay me to play a game, at least give me like something cool to give away to my community during that time. Like, what are some cool things you can give me to give back to my community while I play this game for money? I just think that there's cool ways that they could probably think about integrating beyond just, here's $1,000 to play this game. Here's $1,000, but here's 10 sweatshirts you can give out during your stream that only could be purchased on this paid campaign.
Right.
Like, how do you integrate their community with your paid campaign? So I just think about that because, we get codes for games when people are doing charity streams and stuff. So I don't know. I'm myself am a content creator, and I get tons of emails, and I'm just so turned off. Right in the first sentence, I know immediately they have never seen my content.
Yeah.
And I think that they also should make sure that they're going to the right people with these paid campaigns.
Right.
That's another side of it.
It goes back to making sure that you find the right influencers
Yep.
with the right titles of games. But I kind of also am not worried about the scrutiny part. I think that mainly if you're going to go for different influencers playing your game, you should go for the ones that will actually likely play it and have a good time with their community.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Anything to add?
No,
No?
I was just
Yeah,
gonna
we're-
say that's like it all comes
Yeah.
back like you could sum it up as like curation is key, right? Don't just the shotgun approach is not what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, please watch the content of everybody that you're paying to
Yeah,
play your
absolutely
game.
watch the
Please.
content. Like, know
do that.
who it is that is promoting your game. Like,
Yeah.
do they go as far as doing cosplay? Not everyone's gonna do cosplay, but it happens, right? So, final thoughts. What's one piece of advice for developers kind of looking to engage with their first influencer for their campaign, or first influencer campaign? I mean,
Search. Do the simplest search on all the major content platforms for your game before you pay anybody to play it, and find your organic players. Because if your game is already out and you're coming back to influencer marketing post-launch, even if your game isn't out yet, somebody might be making content about your game if you've already started hitting the press cycle. You might have organic supporters already. Those should be your first outreaches right away. People that are excited to talk about your game before you even contact them, those are people that are already in your corner.
nice.
I
Lily,
have one piece of advice. I have a lot of advice, honestly.
go nuts. Yeah,
Pick one.
yeah.
First one is follow up with your influencers, especially if they're playing the game. If they're testing it, for instance, be open to feedback, because even for one game that I was launching at a publisher, I was probably one of the first to play the game, and I didn't even know where I was going. I didn't know where the direction was. The game was beautiful, but I kept dying because something was rolling me over and killing me, and I wasn't able to actually progress within the game. So yeah, follow up with your influencers. I would also say look at similar titles. Like if you're building something that's deck building, look at Slay the Spire. If you're building a party game, look at some influencers that are playing Uno
Yeah.
or Among Us, things like that. So
Yeah.
if there are very similar titles and games, I would say hone in on the influencers that are there and actually reach out to them, build a relationship with them, because they're going to be the ones who actually build your community for your game, but also help you post-launch if you do develop, additional materials or even a second game that comes out of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I'll say you want to engage the engagers. So if you're having this influencer, make sure that you are commenting on their tweet. You can't be everywhere all at once,
Yeah.
but you know what's special for streamers? If you jump in the chat. If you're the developer and they're playing this game for the first time, and you say, thank you in chat for playing our game and blah, 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 I think you got to engage. We try to comment in all of our charity streams as much as we can.
Right.
If it's I'm going live for Stamp to Cancer and we find it randomly on Twitter,
Yeah. You're just
we'll
one
comment.
Andy. You're just one
I'm just
Andy.
one Andy, but what I'm saying is, I think they just try to engage them more so you get retention.
Yeah.
You want this creator to come back for you. So that means a lot. Just that one comment.
Yeah, no, I
Goes a long
agree.
way.
Mine is don't do this last minute. It's absolutely insane how often we get approached oh yeah, we got 2 weeks before launch. What can you do for me? It's absolutely crazy. We know your main goal is to make a great game, make it fun, all the mechanics, all the stuff, get it all polished and ship it out. And then you decide on a launch date, and that launch date is 2 weeks away, and I'm gonna go and engage with the influencers, and you're not gonna have a great time. It's something that you need to really do very early in the cycle. If you're at a point where let's call it the beta phase or alpha phase, like hire a community manager, someone that really is involved with, potentially can be building the community before the game is like getting launched, or someone that really is down in the trenches and understanding like how the influencer like space is. Don't do it last minute. Seen it so many times, and like 9 out of 10 it fails. So
yeah, you want to be able to actually have metrics as well. So 2 weeks doesn't give you enough metrics.
Yeah,
And if you don't know
absolutely.
where your demographics are and where all of your interest is coming from, or even like who has been wish listing or adding them to like an email newsletter and things like that, it's kind of pretty alarming, and you're not going to get the results that you want. Yeah.
thank you. We're at the end. I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you to my panelists for joining me on here. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having us.